So our last session, Innovation for Circularity in Renewable Energy Value Chains in India, will explore the role of stakeholders in driving circular innovation in RE sector and ensuring their progress to commercialization. This session will be moderated by Mr. Deepak Krishnan, who is the Deputy Director for REI India's energy program and leads work on clean energy initiatives for different consumer categories. He's already on stage, and I would hand over the dais to take the lead on the session.
Thank you, Aisha. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being a patient audience. And so we have a very interesting panel today. But before we start the panel discussion, we just thought we'll also, since the session is about innovations and technology in the circularity space, we thought we would invite one of the panelists to also talk about their technologies. We have Akshay Jain from Cancri to give you a very brief idea of new technologies they're exploring in the battery space. Please, Akshay.
Hello, everyone. A very good evening. I'm Akshay Jain, CEO, co-founder at Cancri. Today we'll be discussing, and it's a short presentation, what we are building at Cancri and how we are contributing towards the renewable economy. So as we all know, that there is going to be a huge demand for the batteries in the time to come. And that is by 14 times in the year 2030. Why is that so? Because there is a huge adoption of the EVs and the renewable energy. And because of that, there is a huge demand for these batteries. But at the same time, what we also know is that these batteries have their own inherent issues. What are those? Shorter battery life, slower charging, and also higher dollar per kilowatt hour values, and therefore it is not being adopted the way it should be. Because of these inefficiencies in the batteries, and because of the increasing demand of the batteries, because of these two reasons together, what's happening is we need more and more batteries. And what it also means is that we would need more and more of the critical materials, what is needed for these batteries. And when we need more critical materials, we need to mine, we need to dig this planet Earth. All right? How we are going to supply to these batteries' demand in the time to come. And that is where Cancri comes in. At Cancri, we are transforming the waste into advanced nanocarbons. We use our patented process, convert this waste into these nanocarbons, and when these nanocarbons goes inside the batteries, we get high performance. And that's it. This is what we are doing at Cancri. Cancri comes in as a carbon solutions company. Now what it means? We have produced 250 different variety of these carbons. This is a powder which we supply to the battery manufacturers for their better efficiencies. We have optimized its multiple parameters like pore sizes, volume, area, conductivity, functionalities, particle sizes, purity levels. All these parameters are extremely important for the battery to function. And that is how we are differentiating ourselves from the market. We have already commercialized this product for the lead acid batteries, doing the industrial trials for the lithium-ion batteries, and also have the proof of concepts for sodium-ion, supercapacitor, redox flow, and many other batteries. All these multiple technologies are being adopted or will be adopted in the time to come for the renewable energy adoption, what this world demands today. Now, why do our customers like us? Because we are giving them the high-performing material at a very economical price. We are giving them a high performance by increasing its energy capacities or the energy densities, reduced internal resistance in the battery, which means there won't be any rise in the temperatures. Because of the efficiencies of the batteries, we would need lesser number of these batteries and therefore savings on the critical materials. And also, because of the efficiencies of the batteries, there will be reduced warranty returns and there will be a reduction in the overall cost and the cost savings for the battery manufacturers. So there's a lot of benefit for these battery manufacturers and the stakeholders when they're putting Cancri carbon inside. Looking from the sustainability point of view, Cancri is not only reducing 13 times GHG emissions by using the agri-waste, but also 80% of the lesser energy is required by the incumbent solutions what world is using today. We are also reducing the dollar per kilowatt hour values, rising the adoption level of these batteries, and also our vision is to create at least 3,000 jobs by 2027. So today we'll be discussing about two simple case studies where concrete carbons have been used for these batteries. This one is talking about the lead acid batteries. What are these batteries? You might have seen in the inverters or the cars, all these batteries, right? When we are putting these carbons inside these battery plates, what we're getting is very simple and unique. You will see here, we take these concrete carbons, we put it inside the battery plates, and that's it done. It's a simple drop-in solution. It's easy to scale and it's sustainable. What we get in the end is a higher strength electrode plates. Because of these strength electrode plates, what you see on your right is concrete plates versus what you see on your left is with the conventional carbons. We have tested with this, multiple tests have been done on drop test, UTM analysis, and also the morphological studies. Let's have a clear look at the morphology of it. Right-hand side clearly shows that how needle-like structures are being formed with the concrete carbons, and therefore the strength of the plates have gone up. Now looking at the battery's performance per se, how the battery performance has gone up when we are using these carbons which is coming from the agri-waste. AH efficiency has gone up, which means how much current is going in versus how much current is coming out. That means per cycle, and a customer can save every cycle, whatever the heat dissipation happening, with concrete carbons, they can save that energy. When we're talking about the life cycle again, it's a very clear indication. The orange bar shows the concrete carbons, the blue ones are the control carbons, clear indication that how the capacity has gone up in every cycle and the overall energy throughput which this material gives. We have also tried it in the solar applications, getting very favorable results, can increase the life cycle up to 1200 cycles with a better DOD, which is depth of discharge, and which eventually means is whosoever putting these batteries in their solar plants, they can save 15% of their budgets of others. This is one of these deployments which we have done. This is in one of the orphanage where we have deployed these batteries, got fantastic results. As you can see the discharge curves, very flat discharge curves, which shows that our voltage is very stable and not dropping very fast. So that was about lead acid batteries. We also have the proof of concept for concrete lithium ion batteries where we are using concrete for the lithium ion. Gotten great energy capacity up to 200 watt, power density by 7,000 watt per kg. Have its great applications for two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers. Can be used for higher peak power acceleration applications, regenerative braking, and also this is one of the most safest alternative, a green alternative. Why? Because this is coming from the agri-waste, and secondly, it is reducing the internal resistance of the battery, and therefore the explosions in the battery, what we see currently, would be reduced. 15 times higher energy density is something which we have gotten, longer life, and which is expected to give us a potential demand of 2,000 tons per annum of this material, and which would eventually reduce the CO2 equivalents by 300 kilotons. Now, talking about the little bit of the traction the customers we have so far, all these batteries we have made with Sparco, Laurus, Future Energy, Luminous, Livguard, all these batteries, some of these customers have already floated into the market and some of the trials are ongoing. Talking about this, how much we have already deployed, 5 megawatt of these batteries have been deployed, which means approximately 4,000 to 5,000 batteries have already been deployed in the market. We already have 9 megawatt of this pipeline for these batteries deployment in the next 3 months. And we already have gotten a purchase order worth 35 megawatt for the deployment. And that is where we are currently looking for, trying to expand so that we can fulfill these orders in the very, very near future. So with that, or to make all this possible, we have a fantastic team. I'm Akshay, did my PhD from National University of Singapore with a patent 15 publications. Mahi is my co-founder, and we know each other for over 17 years now. She has over 9+ years of experience in business and strategy, did a master's from NTU Singapore. Amitej is our product head, ICT graduate, and currently heading the product development. Some of the investors and grants we've supported so far includes Techstars, Climate for Environment, Act Grants, Unido, BIRAC, Evangelize, iStart Rajasthan, iStartup India, and many others. Some of these awards, Presidential Award, Entice Award, some more awards here. So with that, thank you so much for your kind attention, and do join us in making this energy transition greener and quicker. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jain, for such an informative presentation. I welcome you on the panel. So the first panelist for today is Mr. Akshay Jain, who's the co-founder and CEO of Cancari. The other panelists joining us are Ms. Rashi Gupta, MD, Vision Megatronics Private Limited. She will be joining us through an online link. Ms. Shalini Balla, MD, International Council for Circular Economy. Dr. Praveen Kumar, Senior Program Manager, REI India. Mr. Rohan Singh Baes, Founder, Zipboard Innovations and Ziptrax Clean Tech. Ms. Nikita Pathak, Director, Climate, Social Alpha. I request all the speakers to please join us on the dais.
Please. So I think Rohan is not yet here. Okay, but we'll start. In the meantime, hopefully he'll join us. So I think Akshay did a little bit of the introduction that I wanted to do about the need for circularity in the space. With a significantly high renewable energy targets, and the very huge mountain of the net zero that is coming up by 2070. We're going to have a significant amount of renewable energy, that needs circularity, and the morning we also had Rajat from Loham speak about servicing longevity and circularity of these materials. So I think the time is apt, and also renewable energy is being spoken of in conjunction with batteries. So that's the reason we thought we'll also factor in batteries into this discussion. And by a quirk of fate, a session named RE has 3 folks looking at batteries on the panel. But but that also means that we'll have to fit in renewable energy related discussions also as much as possible. So in terms of circular economy in general, the idea is to improve the resource efficiency, keep and the second part is the longevity that Rajat spoke about, and increasingly the geopolitical importance of circularity is also coming to the fore in terms of the materials that we are able to extract and reuse, avoid fresh mining and potential environment impacts associated with that. And therefore, we also need to talk about multiple things, like all other sessions. This isn't an isolated problem where if you just focus on one area, everything would get solved. So there is the policy aspect. For example, do the current rules, help us fight freely, or are we tying one hand behind? For example, a recent Ellen MacArthur Fund report stated that the EU Waste Framework Directive defined reuse as an operation by which products' components are used again for the same purpose. So even if it's an inefficient thing, you will have to reuse for the same thing that it was originally designed for. Is that even possible? So those are some questions around the policies. Similarly, how do we develop these markets? And linked to that is how do we bring in R&D, that is take it from the lab into the market, and we will also try to discuss that. And also since Ms. Shalini is here, we'll also speak about alliances and partnerships, how they can help grow these interventions into the market. So very quickly, just to get started, maybe I'll start with the folks online. Maybe Dr. Rashi Gupta, if you could help us in, say, about 2 to 3 minutes understand what you have been observing in the renewable energy and battery space from a circularity adoption perspective, and in your view, is there any sign of progress? And this is a common question I want to start the discussion off with all my panelists.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Deepak Ji, for this question, and thank you, WRI, for inviting me for this session. What I see in terms of circularity is this is just the beginning now. We all are understanding that there is a need. We all are being responsive towards this ecosystem, but it's a real long way to go. And when you talk in terms of RE, what has happened is there is a lot of graded material which is being put into these kind of systems. First, I'll talk of RE and then I'll come to batteries. Okay. Now, in that, what is happening? And technology is continuously upgrading. There is such a fast upgradation of technology. So people want the best today. So what do we do with whatever is being shed out from the previous technology? One, which is non-functional. Many of the plants are non-functional. So it needs an upgrade. So when we look at this kind of waste coming out, that has not been accounted in any of the Excel sheets in any of the developers. I have specifically used the word Excel sheets here. So that is one aspect that we need to imbibe in the ecosystem right at the inception of the project, which is certainly not the state as of now. That is one thing. After that, what is happening is, say, there are so a lot of e-waste is generated and a lot of solar panel waste in terms of RE, in terms of wind blades, these are all generated. Now, how do you actually deal with this kind of waste? We need to have a proper policy in place, a mechanism, a collection mechanism, which is kind of missing at this point of time. Similarly, when we come to battery waste, yes, the new rules are already out there. But that also needs a lot of streamlining. It needs a lot of, insights in terms of having ground level research and realities. So, and you have to have it based on technology. Like, for example, if you have, like lead acid behaves differently, lithium differently, vanadium differently, and the long-term and short-term life of these products also have to be taken into account. Like I was listening to you when you gave the definition of reuse. So something also that needs to be really in place is on the second life of these batteries and second life of these RE projects. Can they really be used in terms of second life? Because there are certain challenges in terms of battery degradation, in terms of life degradation, in terms of efficiency degradation when it comes to battery, and similarly for the panels and the electronic waste that we are all generating, suppose in terms of inverters as well, because a lot of new technology is coming with a lot of new features. So we need to really see how we can actually use them for the second life in terms of having a low-end application or maybe an application which does not require so many features and it's still safe to use. So just a little bit of insight on this as well, that on standardization front as well, there is a lot of work that is going on in terms of the second life reuse and recycling at the moment in the Bureau of Indian Standards, and we're trying to bring in a common platform wherein we can have a uniform standardization to assess. And of course, one more thing that really needs focus and attention, rather two more things would need focus and attention. That one is having test labs for this purpose. We at the moment in India do not have enough test labs right for the first life, and I'm demanding here for the second life to have test labs. So that is one aspect that we need to look into, and I would again mention skill development, which is still very, very far off from what we really need in this segment today. So, with this, I think I've just given a very short intro of what I wanted to speak about the second life recycling and how we can have actually circularity coming into picture. Because circularity and sustainability go hand in hand, but we've somehow missed actually understanding that how we can make them circular and sustainable both at the same time. We're all running towards the new, but we've forgotten that we have to carry the baggage of what we've already produced. So we need to be focused on that as well.
Sure. Very important point. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rashi. And Nikita, if I could turn to you, please.
Yes. Thank you, Deepak. And thank you to WRI for inviting me here to represent Social Alpha. I'll focus on two things. One is solar PV and batteries, because that's where we've spend time in terms of understanding and building a thesis around what is required from a circularity point of view. I'll start with batteries, and like you rightly mentioned, the demand is going to be huge. So obviously, the need is substantial in terms of the circularity of batteries. But while we're looking at that, we look at 4 problem statements. One is to reduce the waste that is reaching the landfills, or the sort of reducing the waste by improving the performance of batteries. So like Akshay also mentioned, countries working on carbon morphology addition, also looking at silicon maybe addition, which improves the capacity of batteries as well as life of the batteries, thus reducing the waste at the source. Second is to look at alternate chemistries that reduce dependence on exploitatively mined minerals such as lithium, cobalt, nickel, etc. So looking at sodium ion chemistry as well as other alternate chemistries. Third is, like Dr. Rashi mentioned, looking at second use and life of batteries. Once it's used for mobility application and the capacity is reduced below 80%, then how do we use it for stationary applications, which needs cell level testing, just concurring the point that Dr. Rashi mentioned. And fourth is finally looking at, cost effective and energy efficient recycling, which also has other implications such as toxic chemicals being released in the process, which may have global warming potential higher than carbon dioxide. So looking at the entire sort of process of recycling and ensuring that the life cycle assessment is done in terms of ensuring energy efficiency as well as GHG emission avoidance. So while we're looking at this in terms of innovation, since Social Alpha supports innovation and identifies innovations that are solving these problems, we see that the first 2 segments where we are seeing performance enhancement and alternate chemistry, the innovation is at an early stage in India as well as globally. And it needs substantial R&D support to bring it to a MVP stage and to make it commercially viable for a lot of the companies that are working in this space. Whereas in the second use and the recycling space, we see solutions and companies working in this space, but work needs to be done in terms of improving the energy efficiency further and ensuring that from a regulatory point of view, these emissions that may be toxic are reduced throughout the process. And we also understand that 90% of recycling that is being done in India currently is all through informal means, and there we need more regulatory intervention to ensure that these toxic elements do not have impact on the environment as well as on the humans who are handling the substances. While we look at solar PV waste and like other renewable energy technology, solar essentially has a much higher penetration. If we look at the numbers expected to increase to 600 gigawatts based on IRENA report by 2050, which will translate to 4.5 million tons of PV waste, which includes silicon, aluminium, copper, silver, tin, cadmium, and lead. And out of these, silicon and aluminium are to some extent not very toxic, but the others are extremely toxic. Which will have a very significant impact on the environment as well as people. And while we're looking at recycling, there are 2 main methods that we've explored. One is the bulk recycling, and second is the high value recycling. We see a lot of work happening in bulk recycling, which does not recover the environmentally sensitive materials. We need more work to be done in the high value recycling, which will include pre-treatment, disassembling, delamination, and recovery of metals, which is very cost intensive right now. And therefore, a lot of support is required to make it viable in India and globally as well. So high opportunity, but very big challenges that need to be solved in terms of innovation that needs to be explored.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Nikita. Praveen, if I could turn to you.
Thank you, Deepak, and good evening, everybody. So this importance of circularity is very critical for the low carbon technologies because they are material intensive and a lot of discussion is going around that some of the critical material used in this low carbon technologies, we may shortfall in the future. And also the end of life dumping into the landfill is going to create a lot of environmental concern for these low carbon technologies. So we need to address these challenges, and the circularity here come as in a solution. And how the circularity can help us in this? So if we just see some data, and I will start with the solar PV. So globally, solar PV waste is expected to be 4 to 14% of its entire installation by 2030, and it will be 80% by 2050. So if we see by number, so by 2030, the solar PV waste will be around 1.7 million tons in the general degradation scenarios, or we say like regular loss scenario, and this will increase to 8.6 million tons in the early loss scenario. And if we see by the 2050, so in the regular loss scenario, this number will go to 60 million tons, and in the early loss scenario, this will increase to 78 million tons. So the kind of numbers it will be generated in the coming years highlights the importance of adopting and taking a very concrete steps for the circularity is very important. And this data, if you see, 1.7 million tons in the regular loss scenario and 8.6 million tons in the early loss scenario. This highlights the importance of R&D support in the low carbon technology. I have just taken the example of solar PV. So the R&D support can help us in designing the solar PV panels to reduce the early loss waste. So this can reduce significantly, and R&D can also help us in ensuring the material efficiency while manufacturing these solar panels. And same time, these innovative solutions can address some of the limitation of the low carbon technology, especially as Dr. Rashi mentioned in the battery used in the EV applications. So innovation can play a significant role in addressing all these issues. So one path, what I can see, we need to integrate the circularity across the supply chain at different stages of supply chain of this low carbon technology. For example, design this product for circularity, ensure material efficiency at the manufacturing stage. Then we need to ensure the technology which is used for the recycling these low carbon technologies. This technology should be cost effective and environmental friendly. Currently, the commercial technology used for recycling is having some environmental footprint. So R&D and innovation can help in making this recycling technology more cost effective and more environmental friendly. The other part comes key, we are talking about the circularity and recycling, but if you see the data, the kind of collection of these e-wastes are there is very poor. So how we can address? So we need a very robust support from the policy and regulation side. We need a very robust strategy to implement the EPR in the low carbon technology. We need to make sure these the whole process is safe for not only for environment but for the people involved in that. Because if you see the current recycling ecosystem in India, we have more unorganized sector players working in this. And if you take an example of battery, especially the lithium battery, requires a very what I will call is very well documented SOP process is required to ensure the safety, because these batteries are, if you don't handle properly, there will be a serious safety hazard. So how you make sure these unorganized players are getting integrated into the organized player or some kind of capacity building. Solar PV, if you take an example, what happens that these unorganized players can play a very important role in increasing the collection efficiency. Right. So these points, both at the policy and regulation level, and then the guidelines and the R&D support is very critical if we want a very efficient recycling ecosystem. If I can take an example or just look into what is happening at the global level. And we look into the China and the USA. So in China, they are developing a lot of policy and regulation for management of these waste, and at the national level. But what the gap is coming out as per the research, that something different is happening at the subnational level. So we need a greater harmonization at the action at the national and the subnational level. And then a lot of support is required for the R&D for this. And wind turbine, if I can take an example. So in wind turbine, we have the motors. And these motors are manufactured using the permanent magnet. And these permanent magnets are made up of neodymium boron iron magnet, and these contains the rare earth. And rare earths are very critical. If you just see, a lot of collaboration at the international level is going on for these rare earths. So, and these rare earth magnet-based motors are used in the electric vehicle motor, traction motor, as well as 24 different types of motors are used in the power steering. This magnet is used. So ensuring the recycling of this low carbon technology is very much required, not only for the environmental benefit, but to ensure the resource efficiency in this recycling, means in the resource efficiency in the adoption of the low carbon technologies. So these are the few very important things. And as far as the wind turbine blades are concerned, so these are having the unique problem. They are designed for the durability and withstand the harsh condition. So it's become very difficult how you will manage at the end of life. So very interesting thing is happening at the global level. So by 2050, approximately, if I'm not wrong, it will be around 43 million tons retired wind turbine blades. And the collaboration is evolving at the global level, where the recyclers and the wind turbine manufacturers and the building material makers, they are coming together and converting these blades into useful product like cement. So this highlights the importance of collaboration among the stakeholders to take a very right and efficient decision for the circularity. Now I'll stop here.
Sure. Thank you, Praveen.
Deepak ji, I know you would go to Shalini ma'am and Akshay ji, but I wanted to add one perspective on what Praveen ji just said, and it is a very different perspective. See, it's an observation come in perspective. We have been observing, see, the prices have to fall, okay? Now, what is happening is the quality also is changing. I would not comment whether it is good or bad, but it is changing. And we are not designing the products now to last longer. However, if you look at products which were made a decade or 2 decades back, they would last longer. However, they were expensive. The capital investment was more. And now if you look, the capital investment being less, the products do not last, leading to more waste and leading to more emphasis on circularity and recycling and reuse. So what we need more is also an attitude change, a shift and an acceptance of a robustly made product which will last for the entire duration of its life cycle. And if it is robust enough and if it is good enough, it would actually serve its second life also with whatever application it is, it would serve its second life. So more than investing in what is going to happen in the future, let's invest in our present to make something more robust. Of course, economic, I'm not denying that, but at the same time, a long-lasting product which we were making in the history and we're not doing it now.
Absolutely, Dr. Rashi. Something we can relate to with the phones that we use now, what we were using some time back. Very pertinent point. Now, Shalini ji, in addition to the perspectives on what you're observing in this space, also Praveen brought up an interesting point about collaboration across sectors. Now, since you work across sectors, if you could also throw light on what renewable energy and batteries could also learn from other sectors, that would be useful.
Yeah, thank you. I hope I'm audible. Okay. I would like to thank the panel for bringing up different points, and all points are very important when it comes to circularity. my most basic discussion that I began with is when we talk about circularity, why are we not talking about reduction? And so reduction doesn't only mean that reducing the consumption, it also means increasing the efficiency. How we could do more with lesser. How we can use lesser material to be more efficient and still deliver the same results. Is there any innovation that's happening to increase the efficiency of the product? India still today imports a lot of solar panels rather than manufacturing in-house. What material goes into making of these panels? What is the life? What will happen to them? What is the responsibility of the producer? And then obviously the intergovernmental policies play an extremely important role. So how do we ensure when we are importing the panels? One, to ensure that we know what material is going into which panel. A lot of time we see that this is a major problem where we don't know the material. And the mixing of materials, the complexity makes it even more difficult to recycle. I think, again, the point here is one, to make the product more longer in use, keep it in use as longer as possible. And Rashi, you very rightly pointed out the longevity, which is again one of the basic principles of circularity. Thank you for pointing that out. The second is, how do we ensure that at the end of it, we are talking about recycling, and from our policymakers to most of the industry is talking about end of life. There is very less discussion on business models of repairability and refurbishment, and that is where collaboration plays an extremely important role. While we look at the recycling and the downstream of it, maybe 25 years hence, but what is happening now, the repairing and refurbishment of the existing material to pull it back into the economy to last longer. Incentivizing for such models is extremely important. You did mention about the EU directive on the waste, electronic waste. We also need to understand there that the technology that we are using today will not be the same that we will be using maybe 10 years hence. The technology is changing very fast. The material that goes into making of solar panels is changing so fast. So what we are doing today, I think we only need to, tomorrow the same material cannot be used for making the solar voltaic cells. So the material, I believe, should be, any component that's being built today has to focus on material extraction. Where you said using it for the same purpose, will that happen or not happen 10 years from now? Right. We don't know. Nobody can say. And I think that EU directive has some flow over there to understand that you cannot reuse it for the same purpose. But the point is that the material value should not be degraded. It should be used for any other purpose. And that's what circularity is all about. We do not kind of reduce the value, but keep the material value intact. Another thing that we need to understand is, while we are looking at circularity, it is very important to understand that we need decentralized systems. And so we cannot depend upon another country to take care of the waste of some other country. So this has to be decentralized. Again, the collaborations play an extremely important role. And India, and in fact, I work a lot on Global South, so I would say Global South has a tendency, as huge informal market that has the capability to use, and that's an opportunity. It's not, I would not say that that's a lot of time it is being discussed, but I say that's a backbone. And we should use that as our strength to keep these panels more into kind of, and bring more organized sector to make reuse of these panels as long as possible. Another very important approach about circularity is modular approach. So while we are designing the panels, are we integrating a modular approach, thinking about the reuse and repairability, and at the last of it, recycling in mind. And so the focus should shift from end of life to maybe the design phase of the panels as well. That's very much a demand for being more circular in this sector. One of my panelists also did talk about the life cycle assessment, and thank you for pointing that out, because unless we kind of look at the entire assessment, we may not be sure, or we cannot guarantee that the solution that we are providing today will be a long-term solution and a viable, sustainable solution. It may be cost effective, but is that a viable, sustainable solution? I think that needs to be checked. One example that I am yet to kind of study this, and maybe I don't know if there is any study already, there are a lot of floating panels now being used. Have we considered what is the impact of these floating panels on the biodiversity that lies underneath the water? We see that the panels may be more efficient. It's an alternate to using lesser land. But at the same time, what happens when the sunlight is not able to percolate down the water body, and how does it impact the temperature and the biodiversity? I think a study needs to be done there to find out how is it in long term going to impact that thing as well. Last, I think materials. I am not a technology person, so excuse me for that. But one observation from the circular perspective that I can definitely bring to the panel is the materials and the use of more of monomaterials that would help in understanding what's the components, what are the materials that have gone into making of these panels, and thus enabling a better material extraction and resource efficiency towards the end of life. So how do we do that? Again, that's a question to the industry, which will be very important and can be sought after through the collaborations. And I believe India has the potential to do that. Our SME sector is a very strong sector that can look into it, and collaborations would help and encourage innovations, technology, and better understanding more, for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Shalini ji. So, Akshay, coming to you, you presented about Cancre's technology. Now, as let's say it's a new technology in the space, and you are competing against already existing set of technologies, processes, and even business models. So, in terms of getting people to adopt, and because as all our panelists have said, this is a rapidly changing sector. How do we, get these proof of concepts to scale quickly into the market? What are some of the challenges you have faced in your journey, and what would you like to see change to make these innovations come into market faster?
Absolutely. Thanks, Deepak, for that question. So, yeah, like when we started off, I would say in August 2020. Before that, I was into this field for almost 7-8 years. A lot of R&D has gone into it. We were having certain amount of confidence and POC in hands. That was the time we entered into this space. We incorporated this startup. Now, getting into the battery space, particularly getting into the material science, getting any customer to adopt the product is a real challenge, is a real task. Why? Because they have their own name in the market. They don't want to take any risks. Definitely, it's like, if they want to change anything in their product line, which is very, smoothly flowing, and if they want to change something, there is always a risk involved. What is going to happen in the batteries? So when this started off, it was like, okay, can you pass us the samples? Can you give us the materials to try? That was the time, there was a need that we have to open up a pilot line. So that was the first thought. Okay, now we cannot move forward or we cannot get a big funding unless we have the samples to pass and they try it out. When we got into that, they tried it for almost product development. The trials happened for almost 1.5 to 2 years, because that is how the line of development is. Once you do that, there are also a lot of competitors, like what he was asking and mentioning. Like, we have to prove better, and we have to be, much better in terms of cost competitiveness as well. So And it also jumps on the question of circularity in a big way. Why? Because, it's extremely important for all these customers, although we are coming from the waste, right? It's a green product. It's a sustainable product. But do you think that these customers will adopt these products just based on a green label? The reality is no. We are talking today about the circularity. We are talking about sustainability. But what industry is embracing today is a very, very different thing. Unless you show them dollars, unless you show them the profits, none of them are going to adopt your product. So what we are offering is just an added advantage in terms of the circularity. This is the fact. And to be very honest, if we are not going to provide them an extra benefit of the performance we are giving, we are nowhere. Maybe it might work a little bit in the US, but definitely not in India, where there's a lot of MSMEs are still struggling to get the profits, right? So when it comes to the competition, again, to the question, it's extremely important that you have to figure out what are your niche areas, where are you going to compete with those players. Maybe choose one specific area. When we started off, it was like we said our AHWH efficiency is good and strength of the plates is good. Just two small niche areas. And this is how we entered. We started doing the trials and made our way through and now started commercializing. So one very important thing, what the earlier discussion, I was also wanted to put one point there. See, whenever we are talking about the circularity, right? Let's understand this. It's a buzzword today. It's extremely important, but we need to understand why are we talking about circularity and renewables today? Because what United Nations have already predicted, and it's not a doomsday scenario, I don't want to highlight all that, but what they're predicting is that there is going to be a civil strife, there is going to be a temperature rise by 2050, 2070, there is going to be a civil strife. All these things, all these predictions are coming up, right? We as human beings, we have to be really conscious in terms of, what we are building. Can we change now? And that is why I feel it's extremely important today that whatever we are doing, whatever the industry is doing, is for what? Eventually, this is to create certain amount of, comfort zones, well-being for us. But a lot of industries today, what we are producing is actually extracting the resources from the planet. But is it giving back? Not really. And that is why the concept, and that is where the concept of green jobs comes in. What are these? Green jobs are the jobs where the jobs would be created in order to replenish this planet, in order to make this planet again sustainable. And that is where I feel today, where we are standing today, there should not be any job which is not green. Otherwise, why are we doing it? If it is leading us towards something which is a very, the planet in its tatters, we don't want to do that, right? So this is a little bit on that. There's a real need of circularity. Let's take it real. We are unable to see the systems now, but we really see the statistics and the data. We started to feel it in terms of the heat, but when we really see the data, our future generations by 2070, they're going to face it real time. So thank you very much. These are my comments.
Sure. Anything you would like to speed up, change in the current process to get these innovations faster into
Absolutely, yeah. So this was also one of the points I wanted to mention. I just came from one of the summits and we were talking about it. See, as I mentioned already, there are a lot of startups, or there are a lot of technologies which is trying to come in, and that is the need of the hour because the way things are being adopted is not that fast. It is coming, but slowly. We need more and more inputs there. We need more and more startups for this. A lot of startups are coming in. But one very important analogy, what we feel for the deep tech, for the circular kind of economies, for the startups which are working in the circular areas and the renewable areas, it's the time, or we need a lot of patience with them. It's like, growing up an olive tree where you're going to get the fruit after 25 years. I'm not talking about that 25 years, but it's just an analogy. That we need a lot of patience with the startups who are working in this area, right? There are, like bankers, we're just talking to the bankers. Bankers are ready to come and the fruit comes in. They want to multiply the fruits. That is where the bankers comes in. When do the VCs comes in? VCs comes in when there is a flower which comes out of the olive tree. So they have a certain certainty that, okay, the fruit will come. And that is where the VCs come in. What about so many seedlings which are already there in the root, which need some kind of nourishment, right? And there are a lot of seedlings. Our government has done a great job by motivating people, by putting a lot of startups, but we need more nourishment. At that level, so there should be something. I have no solution, but there are certain things which can be done. Certain solutions are there, but I won't discuss all that. But I would say that there should be more nourishment for the seedlings so that more and more initiatives can be taken, and that can be materialized. Not with the help of the bankers' money. Definitely that will come when there is a time to expand in a big way. Nothing against bankers. It's a very useful money to have. But we need more and more nourishment for the seedlings too, which are very young. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Akshay. Dr. Rashi, coming to you, if you have any further observations you want to add on to what Akshay said, please do. But specifically, I wanted to say, saleability of these products to consumers, because ultimately, cash flow and having a steady pipeline of sales is what drives all companies, whether it is startups or large conglomerates. So what are your thoughts on how do we market these better? Because as Akshay said, everyone looks at the dollar or rupee value and how does it benefit them. So at the same time, they need to be we need to convince them about the need to also start looking at the larger picture. So how do you go about this?
Actually, I liked what Shalini and Akshay just said. It was very nice listening to them and very, very insightful. And, when we come to this price war, I think we need to create a value for the product that we are creating. What has happened is we have not realized that there is a value system. What we are trying to do is only a price system. So we need to make a shift from the price sensitivity to value sensitivity. If you do not have a value sensitivity, you will not be able to achieve your sustainable goals and circularity goals. Very, very crucial for all of us. I do agree that at the end of the day, you need to have your economics in place, you need to have your balance sheets right. Agreed on that. But there has to be some aspect where you need to educate the end user or the consumer on what he or she is buying, what is going to be the end of life, and how this entire circularity is going to be imbibed into the system, and what is the benefit he or she is actually creating for the planet and the next generations. So that has to be valued. Now it could be in terms of money attached to it. It could be, there could be a monetary benefit, there could be a non-monetary benefit. But when we do that, that is when we will be able to create a value system. And when we create a value system, automatically the sales will happen. Also nowadays, there is a generational shift that that I'm observing. The millennials that are coming, they're more sensitive towards the ecosystem. They're more sensitive towards what is happening to the planet. So what we need to do as as manufacturers or as the people in this ecosystem, we need to leverage this for having the right product in place, right technology in place, and a right full value chain in place. I will still not call it a supply chain. I would still say it's a value chain. So putting a value chain in place. This would make an impact and this would help you sell very good. I don't see that, just because the products are based on circular economies and, having newer technologies or different technologies, innovative technologies, which are making an impact for the planet, do not have sales. They have a lot of sales. They have a lot of impact. It is just that you need to show the right value to the right people in the entire value chain. That is when you will be able to sell your products well and you will be able to make a decent impact. And you will have enough revenue to fuel the fire further.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Rashi. So I think my follow-up question then would be to both Shalini ji and Nikita on different aspects. So Shalini ji, my question to you would be is that, we have the innovators in the space developing their innovations. They face some challenges. How do you think, for example, partnerships between different parts of the ecosystem, like say financing, policy, large industry who would ultimately buy these technologies, how can such partnerships help move these innovations more quickly into the system?
Deepak, I think you've picked up the most important question, how the collaborations work, because and this is a very good example, because when I sit with the ministry and this was happening, I think I was instrumental in sitting on the committees, the 11 subcommittees that were formed by Niti Aayog in 2021 that were strategizing the circularity for different sectors. And so one thing, after those papers were written down and the drafts were submitted to Niti, the ministries are supposed to take this forward. And so the major challenge I saw when they started reading about what needs to be done as an advisory document from Niti Aayog, they started to think that we have a huge informal sector. We have a huge SME sector who doesn't invest in R&D, who do not have the bandwidth and the capability to get into innovation. But one thing was very, very sure, that India's SME sector is our backbone, and we need to support the growth of this sector. And so how should we progress? The common viewpoint across the ministries that came was we need to strengthen them. And so if you see, the very first policy of India, scheme of India that has come is from the SME sector. The MSME, the Ministry of MSME has come up with a scheme that's called SPICE, which is to improve the capability of the SME sector to make them more circular. So that shows that it gives you a very clear focus of how the Indian leadership is looking at. PLI scheme, be it the SPICE scheme, be it the other ways they are trying to make and convert the informal sector into a more organized sector, is to strengthen these capabilities. Make them a part of a bigger value chain, along with the companies and the large corporates and businesses who have the capability of doing research and investing into innovation, which then could be used by these smaller entities. And so collaboration between the policymaker, the industry, the SME sector, the informal sector, the waste management sector is quite essential to bring in a holistic overview of how the sector is growing, how the sector needs to transition, and what are the gaps. The most important is to understand what are the gaps in a particular area. And when we look particularly, I think we've been talking about batteries today, we were talking about the critical material usage, and we see that it is very important that for India to become Viksit Bharat by 2047, we should also look at our own material recovery, the one that we are using. And again, the collaborations between several stakeholders can only improve the resource recovery during, before, and after the entire life cycle of the product. And that's why perhaps building a better approach, but I think that comes with another thing, is the responsibility of the large corporates and businesses to steer, hold, and handhold the smaller sector to look into these areas. Investing into these businesses is something that lies, I would say, as a responsibility of the bigger corporations to help the smaller ones to grow. Like you rightly said, there are many other seedlings that need nourishment. I believe that is exactly the point that you were making, and you were trying to say that there is much more capability, and that capability needs support, hand-holding, that comes through collaborations, partnerships, and why only India? I think you can look at global partnerships and look at how each country, each region could become more decentralized, could become more independent, have better resource recovery mechanisms, have better material recovery at the end of life, but at the same time, keep looking at keeping the material value within the loops.
Sure. Thank you, Shalini. Nikita, so in the spirit of, these multiple seedlings, their nourishment, and Akshay also spoke about patient capital. And also in the morning panel, we had Sujata from Invest India say that there is no dearth of funding. So how would you respond to these points? We are not able to hear you. Can you try now? No, still not. Dr. Rashi, if you could try speaking once to see if this.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you, Dr. Rashi. Yes. No. No, not able to hear you still.
No. Audible now?
Yeah, now yes.
Yes, sorry about that. Thanks, Deepak. And I'll start with how we look at evaluating innovations in this space. Like everyone's been focusing on improving the efficiency of the startups, of the technologies that they're bringing, so that the waste that is entering to the landfills is reduced. But while we are looking at these startups, metric is required to assess the impact and the sustainability aspects in the beginning itself. So while there is a lot of money that is available, but if investors focus on startups that are looking at sustainability and looking at using more sustainable material in the products that they are building, as well as looking at more life of the solution, higher weightage should be given in terms of selecting these startups from an investment point of view. But while supporting, I hope I'm audible. Yeah. Okay. So while these innovators need a lot of support, like Akshay also mentioned, capital in different forms, like grant, equity, debt, because in the early initial stage, there's high risk, and therefore a lot of capital is required for pilot plant establishment, which can be supported to grant, because initially investment is not available at the very initial early stage for the startups. Startups also need a lot of hand-holding from the product market fit point of view, in terms of building the product that is required by the market. In also the product development stage, they need a lot of support. This is where the social alpha full stack architecture that we've built sort of supports in terms of connecting backwards to the lab infrastructure, where they will have access to labs to build their prototypes as well as to test the prototypes. A lot of the new solutions that are coming in need a lot of validation from experts in terms of showing the performance as well as the sustainability as well as the impact aspects. They also need hand-holding in terms of making the solution more acceptable by the market. So we have forward linkage through industry accelerators. We have worked with Tata Power in the past, where they have supported a lot of pilot demonstration of solutions and validated the performance of this technology, which helps them reach markets and de-risk the solution substantially. Now, these kind of collaborations are critical for startups where they have very risky solutions, where validation is required. So that's where, this sort of backward and forward linkage to R&D ecosystem as well as to the industry in terms of doing pilot or testing at the industry locations is critical for the startups to bring their product to market. I hope I've answered the question.
Yes. Thank you, Nikita. And Praveen, turning to you. So one of the major reasons that circularity and recycling has been has picked up pace quite a bit now is the critical minerals. So how much do you think it is going to actually play a dent in the geopolitics? Given that we are talking about resources in one country, processing in another place. Now, let's say the initial tranche we get those in these assets, solar, wind, batteries. How much is recovery going to help us in reducing dependency?
Yeah, so if we just see the supply chain of these low carbon technologies, so what is happening, like if you take an example of lithium battery, so there is a geographical concentration of raw material. But if you move in the supply chain, you will see that the extraction and processing is more concentrated in one or two countries, and that is in the hand of the very few companies. And that is one of the major challenge right now. And if you go to rare earth, the same problem is there, that although the resources are available in some countries where the collaboration and the partnership like Quad and other thing is emerging to address the raw material thing. But the problem comes when you move in the supply chain and see that extraction and processing is there in one place, and whether the technology is available with the other countries to partners and then address these issues of the midstream especially. So here, that if we recycling, that's what people are looking into, that key. Okay, if we go for the large scale extraction and processing or the mining, that will be the environmental concern, because some of the, like for rare earth and other, the extraction and processing is very energy intensive, and the kind of environmental impact comes due to the mining activity. So the circularity helps in addressing those problems, like the environmental impact due to mining, and then a lot of chemicals that get discharged after the whole upstream and midstream processing of these materials and the components used in the low carbon technologies. Some of the research suggests that if I can take an example of lithium, so circularity can help us in meeting around 25 to 30%, if I'm not wrong, for the lithium demand by 2040, and then the demand of cobalt and nickel around 50%. Because what is happening in the battery space, that a lot of R&D is going on to reduce the cobalt content in the NMC batteries where the cobalts are used. And earlier NMC batteries were getting a lot of attention compared to LFP, but now due to especially in India, we have the tropical environmental condition, the temperature is one of the serious challenge for the performance and life of the lithium batteries. So lithium iron phosphate perform better on that. And one of the concern for lithium iron phosphate was that it was hitting the theoretical energy density. So there was no scope for improving the energy efficiency, that energy density. So what happened now, the CATL and some few labs in the China, they have introduced the manganese in the LFP. So now the new variant is coming, lithium iron manganese phosphate. So this kind of innovation is addressing, so circularity and then the innovation is helping in addressing very critical challenge associated with the materials and the material criticality, especially in the future.
Thank you. Right on cue, and thank you for your wonderful inputs. Now, Anna, do we have time for 2 questions or 3 or 1? Yeah. 2 questions, okay. 1, okay. Niharika, then the one and only question for this session.
Hi everyone, thank you for the wonderful session. I think I'm just going to sort of touch upon what Dr. Praveen said as a part of his final remarks, which is when he talked about critical minerals and then link them to circularity, and then some of those alternative technologies that we might want to look at. And that is what my question is about. We talk about innovation in renewable energy technology value chains, but we are looking at only recovery and recycling as a part of this broader discussion that we've had. Is there also some sort of a thinking that's going on regarding replacing the existing technologies which are highly material intensive with sort of technologies which are not so much dependent on minerals which are probably not available in the quantities that we'd like them to be? Is there that sort of thinking going on within the industry, I know like in academia we are looking at some of these aspects, but is the industry looking at some of these aspects?
Yeah, so in case, if I can take an example of battery, so there, what is happening that researchers and especially startups, they are trying to bring the diversification in the technology space. For example, the sodium ion battery that is coming out as a solution at REI. They are doing a lot of innovation in the lead acid battery. That ultra batteries is coming out, where a lot of innovation is happening to address the limitation of the existing mature technologies. So a lot of options are coming, and because the lithium ion batteries currently are having upper hand in terms of performance, and if you just see the cost of ownership, where you take the key KPI in account while looking into those cost of ownership, lithium is performing well compared to the other. But there is a solution like sodium ion battery, where you don't need the lithium, and then on the anode side you don't need a graphite, you can use the hard carbon there. So a lot of innovation is happening to reduce the requirement of the certain critical minerals in this technology. But thing is that performance and cost, that is going to drive the decision whether particular technology will be able to disrupt the market or not. I hope I have answered the question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
I would like to add to that. There is something called organic photovoltaic cells also. I don't know how many of us have heard about it. They claim to have source material that is organic, and thus easily kind of recyclable towards the end of life cycle. Then there is a material, if I'm not wrong in pronouncing it, percovate it is called, and that again is another innovation that's leading to easy recycling of the solar panels at the end of it. But yes, when you talk about the innovations, I think these are little changes that are happening across the world. A lot of work is going around reducing the material or improving the material efficiency in the design of the photovoltaic cell. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Can I request you to take it offline, because Anna has indicated time was up long ago. So over to you, Aisha.
Thank you so much. Can we have a round of applause for this session? I would like to thank our guests joining online, Dr. Rashi and Ms. Nikita. Thank you for taking out time and joining us online. Before we close the session in person, I hope you've all had a chance to engage with our interactive display outside, the Shocks to the System game. And to conclude the game, I would request Neil to come on the podium and share his findings.
Thank you, Aisha. And thanks, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Neil, and you've probably been accosted by me playing the game. If you haven't had a chance, it's a futures game that's exploring mindsets through responses to certain crises, fictional crises. And you can, if you haven't played yet, you can continue to do so right up until the last of us leave. You just need to scan the QR code, and I think you'll find it enjoyable. About 30% of the summit's attendees engaged, and the most commonly selected choice in our interactive futures game has been choices that point us towards an unsettled and transformed trajectories and mindsets. What does that mean? So these trajectories, the first one, unsettled, is characterized by continuous discontinuity from cascading events and crises of all kind. Sounds pretty familiar. And the need to adjust to a strange and difficult reality of no new normal. The transform trajectory is characterized by the harnessing of the recovery from the pandemic as a reset to accelerate, and other crises, to accelerate a fair and equitable zero carbon transition and enable shift towards approaches like stakeholder capitalism, donut economics, and well-being. Participants chose these trajectories over others. The others included compete and retreat, a trajectory and mindset that is characterized by the strengthening of nationalistic dynamics and the collapse of globalization and international collaboration and the emergence of fragmented regionalism. The other was called the disciplined mindset, and that's characterized by the ramped up use of technology for automation, remote connection, surveillance, and control in an attempt to manage complex problems. So we did all right, I think, as a summit. Is this surprising? In the age of that we chose unsettled and transform. In an age of upheaval, misinformation, and dizzying complexity, it's unsurprising that new ideas and new peoples are coming to the fore. Political swings are becoming more pronounced, policy decisions more fringe, and ideas more radical. Somewhat feasible claims of mitigating climate change through bioengineering are fighting for attention for somewhat feasible proposals to colonize Mars by 2050. And indeed, a megacity beyond dreams is being built in the desert in Saudi Arabia. Organic PV, I think, would have been a dream 10 years ago, and it's just been mentioned on a panel here just now. So if we pay attention to the signals all around us, we can actually see why, although we are pointing towards uncertainty and high risk and this radical unsettled nature, we can also see elements that encourage us to transform. Last year, the first ever Beyond Growth conference was held in Brussels, sponsored by members of the EU Parliament and with thousands of delegates. New models for doing business in old, issue-plagued commodities are taking root, challenging and taking aim at norms and incorporating many of the considerations that we've heard today. You hear our evidence and signals of change. People saying that a renewable energy transition is not enough, it's not sufficient, that it requires considerations of social and environmental factors and deeper thinking. But radical crises do call for radical solutions and at pace, so any solution must center these principles of social and environmental justice. So what does this tell us? Why do we do it? At Forum, we use futures to explore mindsets and broader perspectives. And we focus particularly on using futures to enable systems change for sustainability, thinking beyond just policies and resource flows to the mindsets and behaviors that actually underpin why we do things, why actors act in a certain way. This means acknowledging uncertainty, drawing on diverse perspectives, and thinking systemically and in terms of multiple possible futures. So as the world undergoes rapid changes, understanding the implications of these shifts is paramount for the success of climate investment plans and all of our plans. Using an interactive approach such as you can play with outside is just the tip of the iceberg, but it can provide a unique opportunity to explore the complexities of the future, encouraging you to navigate a world of uncertainty and change, surfacing tensions and assumptions, and testing your own decision-making skills. So by reflecting on the results of this interactive approach, we can better see the inadvertent mindsets. Everyone was voting on the Mentimeter, saying, yes, absolutely, responsible energy is perfect. We all think that's the right answer when it's put to us. But it's only by taking that kind of what we think is the right answer and actually exploring how we would respond that we can actually see the assumptions and the narratives that we ourselves will hold. So going forward, we can be more conscious of the long-term implications of our decisions. So thank you all for taking part. Thank you for giving me a moment to just sum it up. Again, if you do want to take a time to engage, I promise you'll enjoy it. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Neil. I actually haven't gotten a chance to ignite it, and I will after the session. So thank you, everyone, for joining. To formally close the session, I will request Mr. Deepak to come and share the closing remarks.
Hello again, and I will try to keep to time this time. So we had an engaging, one-day session, and lots packed in one particular day. And I think we, as organizers, I'll speak on behalf of all of us. I think we are happy with how it has turned out. Hopefully, you have benefited too. And definitely, this is not the end of the conversation. This is, we have to keep talking. Especially with these some of these voting numbers, if we have to push to, what we consider as favorable, maybe you should also, how do we convince you to do that? So I think we heard from, Ashish Tiwari ji in the morning about, land circularity and, in-depth studies to understand socioeconomic, issues. I think that set the tone for the rest of the day, and all the panel discussions that followed. I think we, stuck to the theme, went in depth, and learned quite a bit. At the India at the helm, we explored agri-PV and adopting an environmental lens while planning. Pinaki spoke about the socio-cultural aspects of land. These aren't things which are measurable, but if we don't acknowledge them, they can really flare up and actually pull us back 2 to 3 steps. Rajat spoke about a lot of the issues we discussed in the circularity panel, and I think, but for me, the highlight from that panel was Sujata saying there is no dearth of funding. I think we should make it into a GIF and popularize it all over. I think the next panel with Tushar, Harsh, and Radhakrishnan was also interesting, looking at the dynamics between developers and investors. Engaging the community as a partner was a theme that I took away from that session, and that also followed into the session that Karthik moderated about people-centered energy transitions. The role of the middle agent or middleman or agent, as we call it, was brought out very beautifully by Sandeep. So that begs the question, should this now start to become an in-house function within corporate so that these sensitive issues are within their control? Again, this is just my idea. But at the same time, I do recognize the benefits of not specializing in everything. Can't be a Henry Ford with all your suppliers in one campus. So, but definitely, a food for thought. I think Radhika had very interesting points about how, they can choose suppliers when it comes to an open access or a group captive contract. So now, is it then the DISCOMs that we need to engage with, given that they are the single largest